Hey buddies, welcome to AmassGames. My name is Simon. Today I'll show you how to set up, play and review the game Lubeck. Now, this is a game that I had a teaser trailer preview video for that unboxing video, and in it I gave you a bit more about the history, the theme behind this game. Crucially, it's a Hanseatic trading port, and we're trying to get the most money to win the game. Money equals points, points equals victory. So this game looks a little bit like Ticket to Ride in the sense that you're going to be going out to various locations. It's a very shiny board, hence you've got a bit of light reflection going on. And having recently been to a maritime museum since playing this game, it's quite interesting because you don't play with boats or ships. You play with something called cogs, C-O-G-S, as in like cogs on a wheel or in a clock or something like that. And yeah, we've never heard of these terms cogs before, so 3 cut out here. If you're playing it with more players, 4 or 5, you're using them. I'm just going to set it out with 3 players initially, and these are going to start in the city of Lubeck in the north of Germany. As you can see, it is a trading port, and you're going to be going out here following these various routes along. Now, they're called cogs. Again, never heard of it before, but in this maritime museum, apparently these days, wooden boats put together like this, whereas cogs, they overlap, which as you can see might not be as good, because it means obviously water could seep in. So we've learned something from that, rather interesting. And in terms of how you play, you're going to choose a playing pawn of whichever colour you're going to be. This game by Reiner Stockhausen. You're going to see Altiplano, also by him. Check that out on the channel. I think yellow is going to clash a bit. And I think considering going out to sea, let's get rid of blue, just so we have something a bit different standing out. So you're going to tuck this all away. And whilst I'm setting up, please ensure you hit the notification bell and subscribe button to be informed of all the other videos coming along. There's over 70 already scheduled. And you're going to place one of your pawns in the starting location of Lubeck. Aside from that, you're going to take the cards and shuffle them up very thoroughly, as it recommends. The reason being so is these cards will clump together. So, here are the deck of cards. They are small cards. First player marker is going to take the compass, so that's going to go off to the side as well. And everything else is going to be shuffled up. I'll explain a bit more about these cards in a moment. So I'm going to shuffle these up. Okay, and then you're going to deal them out. Now, if you're playing it as a 5, you're dealing out 7 rows. 6 is, with 4 players, it's 6 rows, and 3 players, you're dealing out 5 rows. So what we're doing out is laying out 5 rows, because I'm just going to set you up with a 3-player game, a bit quicker to set up and less table space needed. And then you do it one more time with a 1 more card each. So you don't have to have them all visible. They can be overlapping. In fact, that's partially recommended. But as you have a bit of space, I also want to just demonstrate things a bit more clearly to you. Now, whilst I'm still doing this, please ensure you also go through and make sure you comment in YouTube. Commenting in YouTube is best because then everyone else can see it. I know lots of people use other places they want to comment, but it is best always to do it in YouTube. Also, if you want to go through via the description or occasionally competitions, and there's Linktree, which are time sensitive, so do disappear. But also, if you do go through, you can find Instagram with over 2,500 posts currently. And also there's Facebook, so please do like and join over that discussion there too. So there we are, we have now set the game up. The oldest player, supposedly the starting player. These rules are a bit out of date in the sense that obviously any player can be the starting player. And I'll tell you right now, it's kind of a Google Translate in this case. The German rules, with Julie having translated from Germany, is a lot easier to understand than the English rules, which have a lot of weird stuff going on, some rather odd words and into how it's written. And even the layouts, I have to admit, is a bit odd as well. So everyone's going to start, obviously, in the city of Lubeck. You are going to have a boat, a cog, remember, and it's going to be on this location too. And then there are 3 things you can do with the game. So we have this card display. You're going to choose which set of cards you want to take, and then you're going to take some actions. Now, the actions you can take, they're one of 4 options. You can start a trade ship from Lubeck. You're always going to start here, and it's going to move around here up to Riga. It could go to Reval, it could go to Visby instead, and then Helsingborg. And then again, choose to either go to Bergen and then London, or Hamburg, Amsterdam, and Bruges. Or Brugge. So we have various options you can go and divert. It's a game a bit like Celestia, which I think you can find on the channel as well, whereby you can jump on board and join someone else, and then find out they take it to a destination you don't want to go. You don't know that necessarily, but you will be learning some more stuff as the game goes on. So, 4 things you can do on your turn. You can either start a trade ship from Lubeck. You can then consider trading onwards. So, for example, from Lubeck, it must go to Stettin, and then you can say, I'm going to sail on to Danzig, or I'm going to sail on to Riga, or I'm going to go this way or that way, or wherever it is. Or you can bring out another boat. As I said, you can start with a boat in Lubeck. Bring out more boats as long as you have multiple boats. As you can see, we've got some boats there. The third thing you do is pass. You can literally do nothing, and that can occur as well. Typically you'll get one thing that you can do, and lastly you can discard, so you can discard down some cards. So let me take you through a turn and how it works. So beginning like a start player, everyone's going to go clockwise around and pick a package, which is basically 2 sets of cards, and what you're trying to pick is something which allows you maybe to move on to Stettin. So right now you can see some Stettin cards have come out, and for now let's just take them. So we take these 2 cards and they say Stettin. I wish I put out the player mat now because these are quite hard to pick up. So we take Stettin and we take Visby, so we might have to try and use these cogs to do it. And everybody else is also going to take 2 cards. That means that there are going to be 2 piles which have got a card left over, and what's going to happen is when we reset the round, so from round 2 onwards, you're then going to be chucking out another card on everything. So of course something's going to have 3, something's going to have 2, and then you're going to fill up the gaps as well. So we've got these 2 cards. You can start trying to recall what people have, so then everyone else is going to pick up their stuff, and then you're going to start doing something. So now remember, you can take our action saying, yep, we want to start in Lubeck. Now, we've got the Stettin card. What does that mean? It means we can go to Stettin. Great, we can go to Stettin. Now, let's talk about these coins. It's not as straightforward as it seems. It's a game which did take, I have to admit, about 2/3 of the game, at least for 2 of the 3 players to really kind of get this, and I have to admit I was one of them, in the sense that you want another Stettin card to then say, oh, I'm trading with Stettin now. So you're trying to get cards which get you to a destination whereby you can then trade. Now, obviously Stettin's got a nice high value of 5, but straight away people might have a Danzig card, and like over here. So if someone picks up Stettin and they pick up Danzig, you've got a Stettin and then somebody else takes their turn, they get a Danzig. So suddenly the person with the Stettin card has no need for that Stettin card, other than the fact they could be bringing out more boats. So that's how it works. You're trying to play out cards to reach a destination and then try to keep it there to play another one of the same card and score points. And of course, you're going to have one of these to show you where you're scoring as well. So that's something to be aware of. Now, there are some special cards. So firstly, you have to recall that you do have some things as well. You've got to have certain cards and you're going to try and play them out. If you want to start a trade in here, then there's got to be an available ship. If not, you've got to get off one of the ships and come back again. So that's something you have to be aware of. Don't spread your pawns too thinly. Maybe make sure you've got something ready to go in Lubeck. Again, when you reach a place like Riga, do you want to go to Visby and maybe go over towards London, which I believe scores a few more points than the other destinations? Because if we go through some of these locations, Amsterdam would score you 6 if you can stay there and trade. If you've got Reval, you're going to score 6 as well. And I think it's either Brugge or Bruges, or it might well be London that scores 7. Yes, London scores 6 as well. So that's a real reason why you might want to get there. Because some of these cards are upside down, but it doesn't matter. And if we can find the Bruges card. Now, I may have mentioned it slightly earlier. When you reach a final destination, you come back to the start. So you have to, they go, there's 7. So you're spending quite a while going through it. But equally, if you get to here and then someone knows you've got London and they send it this way, then even though they have obviously maybe wasted a turn for themselves to come here, you're stuck with a card. And we'll get on to what happens when you have a penalty to do with cards at the end. Basically, you're discarding money, okay? So it's negative to hold on to some cards. Now, again, if you want to start here, the gamer takes a cog from the cog field, as it's known, and you're going to place it beside Lubeck, well, beside the crest at least, so you can kind of see where it would be. And then you're going to place one of your figures there. So mention that's something you can do on your first turn. Remember, that's only if there's one of your colours available, one of your pawns, and there's a cog available as well. Now, the other option you can do is one figure on its own can be placed on a cog already there. So if there's already a cog and somebody else has brought it out, you can spend your turn to do this and bring, well, you could do that, but that'd be for inefficient things. You want to spread them out, as I said. Bring out, if you happen to be black, you go, oh, that's already in Lubeck, I'm just going to jump on it. Okay, so that's one action you can be doing. You only ever take one action in your turn, and then it moves round, which is why, with more players, it gets more chaotic, because if we're in Hamburg, and, I don't know, somebody's passed, then great. Only one player left in a 3-player game. Hopefully they're not going to play Amsterdam, but maybe they do play Hamburg. And then you want to then get on to Amsterdam. Now you may have spotted there are some special cards like ×2s, which I'll explain as well. But let's talk about those common things you can do. So I've already mentioned this already briefly, but the most important common action is to play a card. And there are trade cards and there are extra cards. Extra card is what they refer to as bonus cards. So anything already played out should be placed on top of an open card. So obviously you're building that deck together, just so you have a discard pile together. And a trade card can be played either if the cog with the gamer's figure on it, so your figure's on a pawn, let's bring one back out to sea, and you can either place it there or a prior town mentioned again, so you can reach it with one move. So if you happen to be in Stettin, you can obviously play a Lubeck card as well. And then what you can then do is move onwards. It kind of says, oh yeah, we're nearby or at the location, we're going to move on to Danzig. Now, every player having a figure on that place is also allowed to go to the next town with that card on as well. So everyone's going to move together, as mentioned. It's very important. And also, in terms of advice, cogs can only go in the direction, as I mentioned, shown by the arrows. So you've also got to be aware that you can't then play a card and come back the same way you've already been. So that's pretty much how the game goes. The layout, by the way, for the rulebook's a bit odd, because you kind of go this side, and then suddenly, if you want to read about the bonus cards, they're on this area here, which is a bit weird. So let's talk about the Stettin card, this ×2. It's called the extra card, or the trade trip card, and it's available in the following towns. And Stettin, there's one in Danzig, Riga, Visby, Helsingborg. And basically, when you hold this card at the start of your trading trip, so you're going to play out that card as a card that you want to be playing out. What that means is, if you're in one of those towns mentioned, then basically the rest of your playing area means you can basically get a better card. So, sorry, not this one. I'm trying to find another one. It's because they look so similar. It looks like this basically. There are lots of cards which have this kind of symbology on it. And what that represents is basically allows you to start in Visby. It allows you to Visby, and there's other ones which allow you to start in other places, such as Helsingborg, anything like this. It lets you take that cog and jump straight into here, straight over to this location, which again is very useful if you've got a Bergen card or something like that. So that is that special card. The extra card, sorry I mentioned a moment ago, basically you get more money. So in Stettin, Danzig, Riga, and Visby and Helsingborg, so just like these other trade trip cards, they allow you to be played as a trade card. So when you take your turn, that is what you're playing. And what that represents, again, I know it's a bit shiny and stuff, what it means is either in a town that you've already got your cog in, or is going to be basically, if it's reaching that town, the gamer has to play this card in front of them, or basically on the table. You've already played it into your tableau for that particular round, and even though it has no value, it does duplicate the value of all cards you're then going to play out for the rest of the round. So if you want to play out the Stettin card, and you're here, and you then reach here and you play a Stettin card, then instead of getting 5 points, you're going to get 10. So you can really jump around. I mean, I've gone just this side of the board alone getting around, so it's very, very strong if you happen to play at the right time, especially if nobody else is going. So strangely, you want to play at the beginning of the round, but equally, then people might mess you over. If you play it later in the round, when people have passed, that's the time to play it. Because you're going to pass, literally you can't do anything. There's no bluffing needed. Now there's another card in here, the pirate card, which there's only, I think, maybe one and maybe not, maybe a couple of them. But basically this card means that you'll stop the trade trip of a cog, which obviously is pretty detrimental. So you're going to play this card and you're going to take one of those cogs out of the game. In this instance, obviously all the figures on the cog will go back to their owners and can be taken again for new actions, but that free cog is going to be placed on the game board and it will be used again, just simply not on that round. It does say the end of the game, but it actually means the round. And lastly, there's another final card, which is called a Schiffwechsel, which means change ships, and basically allows you to be moved from one cog to another. So for some reason you might want to do so, and it might mean you've got some cards which, I don't know, can chain together, and I'll just try and find out where that particular one is. It might be in here actually. No. So that's the final thing. So what do I think of the game? Well, I would give this kind of a good rating. I would probably give like a 6 out of 10. It's an interesting game whereby obviously you are moving out. Like I said, there's some memory in it, which can be a bit of a tricky thing going on, but it is interesting, and I can see how and what Reiner Stockhausen has done. So there's that card which allows you to have a pawn here, and for some reason someone else has got a vote over here, and for some reason you might want to then swap, and basically it allows you to do this. Yeah. So that could be of use because, of course, suddenly you can then move on this boat and someone's done all the work of moving along. So it's very interesting how you're kind of not reliant is maybe the wrong word, but you're waiting for a lot of times, potentially, for waiting and see what people pick up. And then if they pick it up, then you can go, right, I want to go to that location and benefit from it. Now, the mixed reactions, though, was even more surprising from the rest of the group, because I found somebody really liked this. They generally play lighter games, and they thought, oh no, my mum's going to love to play this, and they were really very enamoured with it. They may have won by 1 point, but it did get pretty close. I was lagging behind by quite some margin, but I managed to really bring it back up and only lost by maybe 6 points. And considering we managed to go fully round the board, I managed to get to close to, I think, 48 or something, and the end people were around here. So it was very tight. I think considering the player counts, potentially they could have used a different board for more players. Again, it's a bit more Zex Nimpty with more players, so that's something to be aware of. Again, very shiny board, very interesting and slightly odd. It's been so laminated, but it seems fine. Obviously, it'll last, but I think most board games are pretty I guess, rigorously tested these days and well held together. Quite odd though, these things that you kind of they don't even punch out. You literally have to cut them out, even though they are perforated. Again, some rules things a bit weird, but strangely about that. Lastly, discarding cards. That's something I mentioned briefly before. So if you've got more than 3 cards in your hand, there's no possibility to display one of the other ones. Then that means obviously you can't pass. Then you have to discard one of your cards until you basically can discard down. So that's a drawback. So for each card, you are going to lose the value equal to the coin value on it. So you definitely want to keep playing out cards. It's very important you play out cards. You don't want to be passing early. That encourages people to keep on pushing their stuff around the board, which is very good. It keeps that flow going. But again, any extra cards as well, you're losing 1 point. So you could be losing, that would lose you 10 points. If you had 6 cards, you've got to lose 3 cards. But you also lose a point per card as well. So 3 extra cards will lose you 1, 2, 3, plus that's 13 points lost. So you can swing around a bit, but ultimately do make positive scores. Now, as I said, at the end of the round, and any of them in the Revel, London or Bruges, they again will be taken off and moved back again. And even some of the English words are actually spelt wrong as well. So like the word lightened is spelt ND at the end instead of ED. So everyone's going to come back, everyone's going to go back to the game board, you're going to move your stuff off to the side, you're going to move any cogs spare over here or something like that. Now you have opportunities again to take anything else back as well. And lastly, the compass will move to the person in clockwise direction. So then they'll get first pick as well. Again, the game's over when your cards have been played through twice. And that means, obviously, there's no more cards available. The cards already deposited open as well will be shuffled. So that's going to happen again. And in terms of that final round, any cards, when you're picking out the last card, then you can still refill the row to make sure you do have enough cards to pick from. And the game, whoever's obviously the furthest around this Kramer track, will be the winner. So rather interesting. It's still made by DLP, which I'm sure has got something to do with Reiner Stockhausen. So an interesting premise of a game. It's nowhere as good as Ticket to Ride. Maybe there's some kind of route movement in there, but almost some kind of like Bonanza-like feel to it, the way that you're trying to play out certain things. But yeah, it's a strange one, this. It's hard to necessarily recommend, but it does have an interesting premise. It's interesting. It's hard to articulate, but it does have a quite a good vibe, whilst still being a bit bonkers. But yeah, it's not something that I think people will be playing often, and you hopefully might still actually get a chance to say, oh yeah, there's something in here. It's a bit different. I think that's the key word I want to explain. So if you want to play something a bit less run of the mill, which the word polished might be used, then this is something you may want to check out, especially if you're a fan of Orleans and other games by that designer. So there we go, that is the game Lubeck. Again, very shiny game, and that came out a number of years ago. So yeah, 2009. But for now, back to the table.